Hi math friends, today we're looking at percents, fractions, and decimals again. Specifically converting percents into fractions and then converting fractions into percents. So let's try to remember a couple of things here first. When you're converting a percent into a fraction, we need to recall that a percent is out of 100. The reason that this is going to help us is if I recall that a number like 37%, if I remember that that means out of 100, then I can write 37 out of 100. Converting fractions into percents. So there's the same skill we need to remember here is recall that a percent is out of 100. It seems a little redundant to say that, but if I'm going backwards on that first example, if I have 37 out of 100, I can read this as 37 hundredths. So I can say that's 37 hundredths or 0.37. And then as a percent, I move the decimal over 2 spaces to the right, and that's 37%. This gets a little trickier if it's not out of 100, so we'll have to do some clever things. Let's go ahead and look at what we need to do here. Here's some examples. 1 out of 9. So if I, or 1/9. If I have to change this into a percent, I'm going to have to go to a decimal first. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to have to use long division. I'm going to have to say 1 divided by 9. The reason I have to use long division here is because it'll get a decimal, and that'll be easy to convert into a percent. How many times does 9 go into 1? It doesn't, so 0. Put a decimal. How many times does 9 go into 10? I'm going to extend my line here. 1. So 1 times 9 is 9. Subtract, we get 1. Let's put another 0 here, drop it down. 9 goes into 10 once. And I should start to see a pattern here. So this is going to keep repeating. So we have another 0, and then it's going to go in once. So really it's 0.111, and it goes on forever. Okay, so I'm going to write 0.111, and this pattern continues on for eternity. So I'm going to pause there. We can draw a bar over the top. We'll do that at the end for our final answer. And then we have to remember to go to a percent now. Move this over to the right twice. That's multiplying by 100. So then I have 11.1. And then I'm going to put a bar over that 1 because that 1 goes on forever. Percent. The part that gets tricky about this is probably the long division. Let's look at another one. 3 over 8, we read this as 3 divided by 8, top to bottom. When I write it with long division, I write 3 divided by 8. Then I ask myself the questions and go through the routine. How many times does 8 go into 3? 0. Put a decimal. How many times does 8 go into 30? 3. And if we can use guess and check here, you can say 2 and then realize there's more. You can say 4 and realize that's too much. 3 times 8 is 24. Then I get a 6. I tack on another 0 after the decimal here. How many times does 8 go into 60? It's going to be 7. 7 times 8, 56. If you have other ways to divide that can work too, make sure that we show our work. I like to use long division because it shows work really nicely. 60 minus 56, I get 4. Tack on another 0 after the decimal. Drop it down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. And that ends up going in there perfectly. So now I get minus 40, and I get no remainder. Alright, so I got 0.375. If I wanted to just make this as a decimal, I would be done. But this is kind of my middle step that I need to make a fraction into a percent. So then going into a percent, I'm going to take my decimal, multiply it by 100, so I move it 2 spaces to the right, and I get 37.5%. Since this decimal terminated or ended, I don't have to put a bar over the 5 because it just ended at 5. The other example, the 1's continued forever with that pattern. All right, a couple more examples. Percent into a fraction. Remember that 89% is out of 100. So I have 89 over 100. I should always try to simplify here. This one does not simplify, so I'm done. One more thing, if you wanted to go to a decimal, 89 hundredths, I'd say that's 89 hundredths, so I'd put a decimal here. And we also learned in a previous lesson to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, so you could do that from the beginning. But going to a fraction, this is where I want to stop then. Last example here, 121%. Remember that percent means out of 100. So I'm going to say 121 out of 100. This is an improper fraction, and usually that's okay. This is one way to write the answer. Another way to write this, you might say, well, 100 would be one whole, so then I have 21 left over out of 100. So you could have this as an improper fraction or as a mixed number.